You're all idiots if you haven't realized that. No, I can't do this. I can't deliver another hot but incredibly insightful and correct take without being upfront with you. We need to talk. I haven't been honest with you guys. See, if you've watched my videos, it should be apparent that I am an enjoyer of the animated medium. Shows like Invincible, Arcane, or films like Spider-Verse being ones I've recently named. But my animated proclivities extend beyond the Western Hemisphere. Basically, I like anime. Now, don't get me wrong. I may like anime, but I don't like anime like you like anime. And what's that supposed to mean, Portal? Well, feel free to disagree, but I'd say there's a lot of connotations around being into anime, especially genres like shonen and isekai. Then subsequent stigma from those connotations, and I don't mean the basic stigma like, "Heh, you must not touch grass, loser." I'll have you know, I'm a fervent grass toucher. But these accusations of anime watchers go a little further than that. And the sad part? Some of them are true. However, let me be clear. Where you see grass touchers and non-grass touchers, I see a divide between people who watch anime as a storytelling medium and people who use anime as an escape, sometimes at the cost of their connection to reality. I'd say that the main difference between these two camps are three things: how we actually enjoy the shows we watch, what we get out of them, and why we do so to begin with. Part 1. How. There are multiple ways to enjoy a story, but they don't have to be mutually exclusive. Take Attack on Titan, for example. Here we have a multi-layered, complex story about war, freedom, oppression, dehumanization, and cycles of revenge. There are many themes and plot points for the audience to consume, enjoy, and pick apart, along with all the emotions in between that move us to see this tragedy unfold. This story's themes are partly so riveting because they are still relevant today, and at the end of the day, were conceived in the world we live in, which feeds the experiences the story is drawn from in the first place. It's easy to self-insert yourself into the characters to the point you can get lost in the world and feel the emotions of the characters as your own, identify with their stories and persecution, and in some ways overwrite the themes of the story with interpretations that align closer with your own life experiences. In fact, I'd encourage that to an extent. Perspective taking is important and is one of the highest forms of immersion and appreciation you can take with a story. The core issue arises when one becomes so engrossed in a story that rather than taking lessons and ideas from the story into your own life, you allow the story to keep you locked in itself. You allow it to frame your thinking to the extent that instead of evaluating everyday situations and life experiences for what they are, you're busy analogizing your life and projecting stories onto the real world, connecting the two in ways that frame your life as a plot, with you, the protagonist, at the center of it all, and antagonist and core themes that you keep seeing in these everyday situations, which is the ultimate false allegory, as a focused storyline with a specific narrative purpose can never encapsulate a true life. Seeing yourself or others as character archetypes traps you. Every situation starts to feel like a grandiose moment you're meant to derive meaning from, even when it's just life happening. If your struggles and adversity doesn't amount to a special fate, the way it does in these shows, facing reality will be far more painful and confusing than it would have been if you simply accepted that sometimes these things happen. Let's say you, in this case a Naruto escapist, is sitting in the cafeteria at school. You just had someone from class earlier pick on you. You're feeling humiliated and lesser than. In this moment of strife, your mind looks for some way to cope with this. Maybe you accept it as an insignificant moment, a painful and frustrating one, but insignificant in the grand scheme of your school experience. It may mean that the one kid who put you down was an asshole, but doesn't suddenly mean that you need to identify with the ostracization that one person put you through. However, an escapist would cope with this by justifying the alienation as a part of their grand narrative, where now this bully represents everyone, the village, and the escapist is the protagonist, Naruto, sitting on his swing alone. If you process these experiences in this way, what happens when life opportunities that don't fit this one narrow view present themselves? Like making friends in the in-group or invitations to connect. I hear you, and yes, I do believe for many this can snap them out of their limited worldview, and encourage them to reconcile with their coping strategies in order to take on these unexpected opportunities. But I do think there's also a group that will be so tied to this coping mechanism that they'll miss out on experiences that diverge from their comfort zone, made of narratives which are inspired by the media they consume and escape into. What sort of life does this create for? How does this bode for the future? We all can imagine the difficulty of achieving something, reaching an end in one's story that feels like it warranted all the trials, tribulations, and persecutions in one's life. And even if that success is achieved, where does that leave you internally? If you think you may be an escapist, picture this. You're at the end of your life. You lay on your deathbed, and the Grim Reaper shows up to claim you. You make eye contact with this being, and in that one moment, a core question is communicated. What was my life? What could have been? What should have been? And right then and there, the Reaper taps your forehead and shows you your entire life, all the paths you took, all the things you achieved. You're going on a trip down memory lane until you see things that never actually happened. Relationships you could have formed with people you assumed disliked you. Career, love, and life opportunities you never seized because you were too detached from living in the moment to even see them. Maybe even opportunities you should have seized. Before the visions end, you see yourself in your inciting memory, being picked on in class. Maybe you got beat up or hit with a throwaway comment that cut deep. Some people laughed, but eventually everyone moved on. You realize how much you had misremembered this memory to fit into your narrow-minded narrative. A protagonist persecuted by their own village, burdened with inglorious purpose. And in that moment, you snap back to reality. Your youth and infinite potential ripped away from you. The Reaper looks you back in the eyes with a question of his own. A question you lack the breath to answer as you process everything with regret washing over you. Was it worth it? Part 2. What? Now that I've explained how this engagement with anime works, we arrive at the next natural question. What do escapists actually get from engaging with stories in this way? What is so enticing? And yes, I partly did answer this already. Cope. A bad memory or traumatic event is a lot easier to cope with when you engage with it as if it's a marker of greatness within your grander story. But I don't believe that's all there is to it. You don't just escape something for another similar thing. You escape one situation to embrace another that has things the original lacks. In this case, we already know escapists are escaping everyday life, our world. But what is waiting for them at the other end of their binges and daydreams? In most shonen and isekai mainly, protagonists live storylines that center them, the world, in one way or another revolves around them and finds them to be powerful, wanted, and admired. An escapist can look to insert themselves into this world to be immersed into these things that elude them in real life. Escapism, in turn, provides them with a constant dopamine drip, the reward you get for blurring the bounds between your life and the character that has everything you want. Living vicariously through characters and recycling through them to feel their achievements as your own. Luffy's belonging within his found family and crew. Naruto's acceptance by the Hidden Leaf. Sung Jin-woo's admiration by his peers all feel so real and personal to the escapist that they feel as rewarded as they might feel if they achieved those things themselves. But this addictive cycle only promises you that rewarding feeling if you marry it. Stepping out of that can leave you feeling empty, lonely, unwanted, or weak. And the truth is that the real-world antidotes to these problems involve learning social skills, facing rejection, facing failure in a process of trial, error, and growth that takes much more reflection, time, and energy than watching a 20-minute long training arc. A lot of the time, especially in isekai stories, the training arc or improvements don't even occur. The story is almost written with the escapist in mind, as many isekai MCs are just like the escapists, with the key difference being that they actually leave their world for a new reality where all sorts of unearned confidence, power, and harems are thrust upon them. Maintaining a healthier separation with the material might encourage another person to have a better relationship with these fictional worlds, but for an escapist, that third-person view barely exists. The only thing stopping them from legitimately Jumanjiing themselves into the screen is the screen itself. Part 3. Why? I'm sure by now the reason people become escapists to begin with isn't lost on you. Everything escapism offers you is something life doesn't, not without work or reconciling past traumas, from social validation to success to love to gratification and connection. That's why I made this video, not to pick on the viewer who might understand what I'm talking about all too well, or to laugh at them with the ones who don't get it, but to connect with you. I didn't read some research article or BuzzFeed post to say all this. I drew from my own personal experiences, because I've been there, and I know that the antisocial rift everyone feels with escapists or the cringe anime fans that people on both sides see isn't some byproduct of an innate destiny or purpose. It's the result of spending time immersed in fantasy rather than building social skills. And that's all they are, skills. Not some special thing you lack that you're mocked for, something you can build, foster, and create to connect with the world just like everyone else. Belonging, validation, and relationships exist for you out there as well. Don't wait for some hypothetical reaper to zap it into your mind for you to realize that. With that said, I have one more question for you. Are you writing your story, or are you trapped in someone else's? Thank you for hearing out your favorite voice on the internet yet again.